Hey everybody, Amanda Olson, Master Mom here. And today I thought I would take some time to review this magazine with you. It's Attitude, but for ADHD. Not just kids, but tips for parents, tips for families, and also adults that have ADHD. It says strategies and support for ADHD and LD. So I picked this up a couple of days ago and have been reading it, and I thought this was really good information. You know, if you have a family member with ADHD, you know that some of the struggles they have and how much stress it can be for them. So I really did like this magazine. Here, I'll hold it up again. It was I think it's a good resource for families on helping to cope with all different kinds of issues that ADHD brings about. So in this particular issue, there's a 10-page school guide, tools to assess and improve your child's education. You know, it just takes a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of shift in some of the things that you do that can make a huge difference. It doesn't have to be this whole big giant game changer plan. It can be just one or two little tweaks to what you're already doing, and it can make a very positive difference in your life. So let's just take a look at some of the articles. We'll go to the 10-page, the school rules first, and talk about the tips that they have there. All right. So it's a very nice magazine. It's got good graphics, good information, nice highlighted areas for you to quickly get your tips. In the beginning of this, it talks about that 85% of parents surveyed who have children with ADHD have considered it changing schools or have done it already to help with the child's learning style. You know, so if this is you, this might be something that you've considered, finding a school that has the resources to help your child, or even homeschooling, or finding a tutor, something like that. So you're not alone in that thinking. And then, so the first thing it asks is, does the curriculum fit your child's learning style? Now, as a martial arts instructor, one of the things that I talk about a lot to my instructors, in training the instructors to teach, is that if the child, or the student really, adult too, if they're not learning, then you need to look at your teaching method. You know, you need to adapt to how they learn. You know, we have rules, we have structure, we have, big classes where you teach to everybody, but there are people who learn very specific ways and they need a little extra attention, or you just explain it a different way. I mean, as parents, we know you can say something 100 times and then another person says it in a different way, and the kid goes, "Oh, I didn't know that." So it's just how it is, and I hear it all the time. I'll have, I'll teach a lesson to my class, and somebody will come up and say, "Oh, I've never been taught that before," and it's not that they haven't been taught it; it hasn't been taught in a way that they understood it. So that is important. Check to make sure that in the school or the classroom that, one, the teacher's aware of your child's issues, and then, and as an adult, understand how you learn and set yourself up for success by putting yourself in situations that you're going to function in the very, very best. They talk about class size, and as far as class size goes, as long as there's enough people in there and time given to the students, the class size doesn't really matter that much. If it's a chaotic group of 6 people, that's going to be bad too, as opposed to a disciplined, well-structured, group of 35. So it's more, in my opinion, it's not so much the size of the class, but the structure and the organization of that class, and the teacher's ability to manage the class. So that might be, in my opinion, that might be something more to look at, and not get too concerned about class size, but be more concerned about discipline in the classroom, because we know structure certainly helps with focus. Looking at how does the school handle discipline, That's important. That's important anyway, whether your child has ADHD or not. That's something that you should be paying attention to. And is your child's teacher willing to work with you and help you and let you know how things are going? I think that that is very important, obviously. Again, for anyone, not just students or children with ADHD. So even though this is geared towards people with ADHD, I think there's some great information in here for everybody, you know, because you may work with children with ADHD, you may have a family member, you may have a spouse. Just taking some time to understand their point of view and what they're going through can help you just be a better friend, a better family member, a better teacher. So this is a good magazine for everybody. All right. So those are just some things to think about in the classroom that I wanted to go over. You're certainly, again, I'll hold the magazine up again. This is the magazine, and pick one up. I got this one at Barnes & Noble. I'm sure you could look it up online and read it online if you like. But that's just one thing, thinking about school. Here's an article, Mending a Broken Relationship with Your Child's School. So, you know, when your child is struggling or having problems, behavioral, emotional problems, you know, Mama Bear can come out, and sometimes we do things not the best thing to keep life smooth for our kids, and we do need to take time to look at how we can repair that, because ultimately I believe educators really do want to do what's best for the children, and they do want to work with the parents. You know, I know for myself, when a parent opens up to me and lets me know what their child is struggling with, it helps me be a better teacher. It helps me look more at that child of what they're going through and how can I help them more specifically. So just a note to parents, don't look at telling the educators or the teachers or the coaches in your children's life, you know, don't look at telling them about your child's special needs as labeling them, or the people aren't going to want to work with them. It's actually quite opposite. The more information we have as teachers and coaches and educators about your child, the better job we can do. You know, so, you know, I know sometimes it may feel like, well, if I tell them that he has, you know, sensory issues or something like that, they're going to not want to work with them. And I want to mainstream my child. I want to make them, you know, fit in and be just like everybody else. Well, we want them to fit in too. You know, we want them to be their very best. But if we don't have all the information, if some of that information is withheld, it's very difficult for us to do that. We want them to be able to participate in everything just like every other little child. So don't be afraid to tell the adults in your child's life what they're working on, what they're struggling with, because, you know, if someone is teaching or coaching, they enjoy it and they like kids. At least I hope they do, because you spend a lot of time with them. So my advice would be to make sure you educate the educators on what your child's going through. Okay. Good articles and strategies for talking to your school in that section. This has a little highlight here. At one point, my son was so unhappy he refused to talk at all about school. You know, and that's a sign of avoidance. You know, just refusing to talk about it, and that's something that not just kids that are struggling, but really a lot of abuse victims go through too. They don't want to talk about it. They want to bury it, and understandably. But if your child is behaving that way, they don't want to talk about who they sat with at lunch, or they don't want to tell you about the time on the playground. Those are some kind of red flags, you know. They should be happy to tell you about their day. And if they don't want to talk about it and they're withholding, you do want to pay attention to that. That could be a red flag that something's not going very well. Let's see. 7 steps article here, 7 steps to finding a new school. So, you know, maybe it is time, you know, not everything is a perfect fit for everyone. That's why there's a million different types of educational systems. There's so many different books on the same subject. If we only needed just one and done book on anything from relationships to how to cook, there'd be one cookbook. But there's literally hundreds of thousands of cookbooks. All right, so if it's not a right fit, do your due diligence and find a school that you can work with. This one parent says, we looked for a school that had a very strong anti-bullying policy that they honored. So, if your child is struggling with that might be something very important. Unfortunately, I do know of some schools who their idea of having a bully program is zero tolerance. Well, that doesn't work. It should be an educational thing. It should be a teaching and learning thing to prevent bullying, not to pretend that it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as zero bullying going on. We don't have a bully problem. That's a school that is not going to be helping you with a bully problem. Again, that's just my experience. This is a parent stating, my son came home happy from his new school. He told me no one yelled at him. That's pretty powerful. That gives you chills. That makes you want to cry. So, if your child is getting yelled at all the time, there's a difference in correcting behavior and yelling at a child. Time out, explaining, if they're misbehaving, they shouldn't be able to participate in certain things. They should have a timeout, but they shouldn't necessarily be yelled at. It's counterproductive. It might relieve some frustration on the teacher or the parent, the coach, on their part, but it does nothing for the child. As parents too, we need to realize that, not just with kids with ADHD, but all of our kids. Yelling is just a release for us, so as parents, let's make sure we find a different way to release our frustration than yelling at the kids. So where your child spends their time at school obviously is very, very important to their emotional well-being. And if they have issues such as ADHD or autism, anything, learning disabilities, having the educators on board with helping you is going to be extremely life-changing for your child. One of the articles I was reading in here, let's see, go back and find it. Here's one on tying up the loose ends of household clutter. Organizing and things like that are very difficult for somebody with ADHD, so there's some great strategies in here for that. I actually found them helpful for myself, so good stuff in there. And let's see, how to delegate to your kids. One thing that we do is sometimes as parents we give too much information and then it all just gets jumbled up. It's like this giant puzzle and you've got 1,000 pieces to put together. Well, how about we put these 3 pieces together? That's something that a young child or a child with ADHD or an adult for that matter can handle. All right, I've got these 3 things that I need to do. This is the order I need to do them in, instead of too much information, too long of a list. So some tips in here on how to delegate correctly to your child as you're teaching them to do things. Here's an article on how to deal with friends and family, helping them understand the ADHD diagnosis and the symptoms that go along with it. Sometimes people are looking at your child's acting a certain way and they think it's your fault, you're a bad parent, or why don't you discipline your child? So again, being open with the people that are close to you about what you're going through and what's going on can only help everyone, and you can say, when you behave this way towards my child, this is the reaction that happens. They shut down, they put themselves in timeout, they just want to get away. So if we want to keep them engaged and having a good time, if we could communicate with them this way, that would be much better. So there's some tips on that in here, and not being afraid to let people know what you're families going through. Also, again, there's a lot of great articles in here for adults with ADHD. So if you're living with a spouse or a family member or a friend, a roommate, there's some tips on here that can, one, help you if you have ADHD, or helping you live with somebody who has ADHD. Let's see. Some things on confidence, which I'm a huge proponent of. Teaching kids confidence by having them do things. You know, the less we have our kids do, the less they think they can do. So here's some tips on having your children learn how to do simple things, from laundry to helping plan dinner, helping cook, even calling up and scheduling their own haircut or dental appointment. I think that's a really cool one. You know, I'll have from time to time young people call the academy, Olson's Martial Arts, and you can tell that they're young and they want to make an appointment for an introductory lesson, or they want to ask what time classes are, or you know, when is this special event, and they try to get all the information, and you know the parents had them call, and I just love it, you know. So I try to keep them on the phone a little while and get them used to talking to adults on the phone, making that phone call. So some good strategies in here on giving little things for your children to do that can help build their confidence. An article on art therapy. One of the things that I really liked in this one was, in this article, here I'll show you, it's a picture a little girl drew. Art therapy was, you know, kids with ADHD that are having behavior issues, and as they're learning, sometimes they get a lot of negative feedback from adults or even other kids. You know, their energy is can be agitating, and people don't want to be around that very often. So they can get a lot of negative feedback from people. This article talks about a little girl who was going through that, but one thing that she did was draw, and an art teacher noticed her drawing and just, you know, was like, wow, you're really good. You know, just some positive comments, some praise. And according to this parent, it just made such a huge difference in the child and their confidence, because it was like, something I did, somebody liked, you know. She had not been experiencing this in her life so much, you know. So there was like a teacher, an authority figure, who said, wow, you're really good at this. I like it. Let's do some more of it. And it just brought the girl out of her kind of nobody likes me slump, you know. And I just thought that was a really beautiful article. It's also a great reminder for us as educators, parents, and teachers, coaches, that a little bit can go a long way. You know, this art teacher was, you know, took the time to look at a picture and say, wow, you're really good at that. Changed the whole girl's perspective of herself. You know, changes this perspective of herself so that she can have confidence that, hey, I might be okay. I might be an all right person. I've got something to offer the world. There is articles in here about food, diet, things like that might be contributing to increased hyperactivity or focus issues. So you guys, I don't have any personal advice on that, except that it's a really interesting article and it'd be good to read. Obviously talk to your physician about any diet changes or anything. There's articles in here on new treatments and new therapies for ADHD for kids and adults. There's a Q&A in here. You ask the organizer. So this is her article here, Ask the Organizer. And she talks about, well, actually she answers questions. People, kind of like Master Mom, they write in organizational questions and she answers them. How just to organize your stuff. You know, I know that's got to be frustrating. You know, it's frustrating anytime you can't find something. Where did I put that? If you have ADHD, I'm sure that can really become a challenge in your life. Where's my stuff? And it, you know, then it causes you to be late and frustrated, and it just makes everything a little bit worse, a little bit harder than it should be. So some good tips in there on that. There's some other Q&A things where people write in and ask questions. Ask the experts. Sorry, ask the experts. And here's an article I like, Your ADD Life. The quirks that we were born with keep our lives fresh, interesting, and full of creativity. This article is written by a doctor who has ADHD himself. So he's a successful, accomplished person, and he's writing this article on how you can do all that with ADHD and how you can embrace some of the benefits of having ADHD and use them to your advantage. So also some tips on here on if you're in the workforce, things that you can make sure that you do and don't do at work that would inhibit you from moving forward in your career. So I thought that was really educational too. Lots of products and advertisements too for maybe treatments, books, articles, things that you might want to look into. And let's see. I like this. There's an article here. Many adults with ADHD forget how cool they are and how much they have given to their families, their work, their friends, and the world. So just some positive writings on, okay, so you have ADHD. Here's what you can do with it. Kind of just like anything. My husband has Parkinson's, and it's like, well, we're not going to quit what we do. We're going to just do what we do with Parkinson's. And what are some things that help you do a great job, and what are some things we need to watch out for and be careful of. But you don't stop living your life. You don't quit pursuing your dreams. You don't quit anything. All right. So if this is new for you, a new diagnosis for you or a loved one, just say, okay, this is what we're working with. How do we move forward from here? Don't let it be this giant roadblock for you. There's ways to go under, over, around, and through obstacles. You don't have to let them stop you. But that's really the gist of it. Pretty quickly. There's different articles in here about, because along with ADHD, anxiety, frustration, and different things like that come along with it, if we don't manage it well. So there's some tips on that in there. But again, this is the magazine, Attitude. I thought that was a cute name. And I would definitely recommend this magazine. I really enjoyed reading it. I picked it up because I work with a lot of kids with ADHD, and I just want to know how to better communicate with them and help them be successful. But I actually found it very informative in other ways too. Lots of tips that I can use, and just for myself. Also being able to have a good resource for my families in the academy that have ADHD, and for you guys too. So I think that's about it. So if you're interested in something like that, or if you have a friend you think would be interested in, let them watch this video and share it with them. Go pick up the magazine and or find it online and enjoy. All right. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you find this as a good resource. All right, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you around.